Greetings and welcome to another edition of the Pedalshift Project. The Pedalshift Project is a series of conversations, thoughts, and experiments around the bike touring lifestyle. From tips and tricks to ideas on how to ride your ride, let's shrink the world by bike. Show notes and more are available at pedalshift.net/170, and you can email the show pedalshift@pedalshift.net or call the voicemail hotline 202-930-1109, and you can check Pedalshift out on all the socials as well. Very happy Independence Day to you, my U.S. listeners, and a happy 4th of July to everyone else, if you're downloading this on the day of release. If not, well, happy whatever day it is to you. This week is a special one-episode tour journal, Volume 15, if you're keeping track, playing the home game, featuring my 2-day, 116-mile tour of the Oregon coast from Cannon Beach, Oregon to Newport, Oregon. Thought this would be a wonderful type of episode to put out on Independence Day. It was a heck of a ride. I'm not going to yammer on much more about it. Let's get into it. Volume 15 of Tour Journal's Oregon Coast Escape.
Just thought I would quickly give a bit of a rundown on what my plans are. And I think everything is subject to change, but it's such a short trip that it's unclear if there would be any real reasons to make any changes. So right now I'm at Union Station in Portland, Oregon. Had a nice visit with family. I had a great time with Podcast Palooza, but I'm really kind of itching to get out. I rode so much this week in Portland. I probably was around 50 miles worth of riding, which for me is a lot over the course of just a few days. I did a big loop around my old neighborhood. My brother couldn't live further away from where I used to live. As you can hear, of course, trains are always a part of my bike tours. So I did 20 plus miles that day. I did 20 miles on the Podcast Palooza day. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of biking. But it's great because I feel really good. Did a good shakedown on the Green Goblin, which hopefully you've seen a picture of on social as well. I'll put up another picture now. I've loaded it up to get down here. And of course, I've now packed it all up into the big duffel to go onto the Point bus, one of several different ways that you can get from Portland to the coast. This one, you purchase your ticket through either Greyhound or Amtrak. I did it through Amtrak. It's just easier than I have it on my app. And the great thing is that you can put your bike under the bus. It's usually a very comfortable bus, a big one. There's power outlets, all that other kind of stuff. There's Wi-Fi to the extent that ever works, which it never does, but whatever. And none of these buses or trains, I feel like it ever works, with exceptions, I'm sure. But I'll be loading up in there and going out to not Tillamook, which is my normal route. That's a different bus. But I'll be going to Cannon Beach. And the beauty of Cannon Beach is I haven't been there in a long time on a bike. In fact, I haven't ridden between Astoria and Tillamook since my 2014 ride of the entire Pacific Coast. So I'm really looking forward to getting out there and doing not a new to me stretch, but a stretch that I haven't ridden in a while. And that's what today is all about. I'm also going to be staying tonight, if all goes well, about 50 miles down the road at another one of those fabulous Oregon parks called Cape Lookout State Park. It is, by many people's estimations, the best of all of the hiker-bikers on the entire coast. And I usually stay in Pacific City, as many of you who have followed the show know, and I like the county park there. Really convenient. It's right by the beach. It's right by a brewery and stores and things like that. I love Pacific City. But for years, I have thought, I really need to hit Cape Lookout one of these days. Today is the day. So I'm going to stay there tonight, and then I'll have breakfast and a hang in Pacific City tomorrow. Cape Lookout has got apparently some great hikes and stuff like that. The downside is, even though I'm leaving relatively early here from Portland, I'm not going to be starting rolling until about 11 a.m. As many of you know, I like to tend to get an early start and an early finish. It's not going to happen this time. I've got lights if I need them. I doubt it. It's only about 50 miles. I think that's probably about 5 hours of riding, give or take. There's some climbs today, typical of the Oregon coast, but nothing all that big of a deal. I will be going through one of the tunnels, I think the Arch Cape Tunnel, if memory serves. So I'm looking forward to doing that again. That one, if I remember, is the one I hated the most because I think it's on an uphill. I think all of them are on an uphill as you're going southbound, but I'm used to them by now. It's not that big of a deal. You hit a button, the cars know that you're going through, and you just try to go through as quick as you can so you don't hold folks up. So that's the today thing. Tomorrow, I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? I really love going to Newport. And even though it's going to be an extra, probably 10 to 15 miles than I normally ride to get to Newport, I decided that I'm going to go for the 65-mile ride tomorrow and go not just to Newport, but past it to South Beach State Park, because I just love it. I opine about it, usually after a few beers at Brewers on the Bay from Rogue, but I just really love going there, and I think that I would regret not making it there. I do have bailout points if I want to, if I'm just not feeling it, but I'm riding really strong these days. I mean, I think the 2 weeks on the bike just a few weeks ago, really, I'm up to full bicycle touring shape, and I don't see any reason why I can't hit the 65 mark down to Newport. And then the next day is the day to return, and it's a bummer because I would have liked to have had more riding this week, but just circumstances, work stuff, and family stuff. It was at least nice that I get a couple of days out there, so I'll be taking the buses back, kind of a repeat of that crazy northbound transit route that I did, but just much easier. So that'll be Newport to Chinook Winds in Lincoln City, then Lincoln City to Tillamook, and then Tillamook back to Portland. So that is basically the entire ride for this trip. I will be chatting with you later on. I am at Cape Lookout State Park, and I hope you can hear the sounds of the beach. The waves are crashing really nicely. There's some folks out fishing. It looks like they're surf fishing. I got some folks with a campfire over here with a pug. To my left, we've got some more folks who are, it looks like, several fires over there. I guess here there's no restrictions. There's certainly no burn restrictions, or people are ignoring them. But it is cold and damp, so I don't think there's any real issues. Plenty of driftwood out here. So, your classic sort of Oregon coast fire happening right now. It's kind of nice to see. The campsite here is, as advertised, really, 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 really good. We're maybe a couple hours from sunset, maybe an hour and a half, give or take. We're looking at about 7:22 p.m. right now. It's darker now, though, than it was even a few minutes ago, and it's not because of the sun going down so much as it is the fog is really thickened up here. I'd say it's probably in the low 60s at this point. I've thrown on a bunch of layers. I was originally going to go take a shower, but I think I might even do that in the morning. I don't even know at this point. I'm not super excited about jumping into a shower and then getting out of it eventually. I think I'm more excited about getting into a tent at some point. The riding today was really, really great. It was fast in a lot of parts. The only real kind of hills of note are around Arch Cape. I think I mentioned that in the morning edition. Of course, with Arch Cape, you've got the tunnel, and that went perfectly well. We managed to slap a Pedalshift sticker on that one. It had not been there before because, of course, I didn't have the Pedalshift stickers back in 2014. The show was only a few episodes old, really, at that point, and I was on a monthly rotation. So, I think I did shows in the middle of that tour, if I recall correctly. I did one in San Francisco, sort of midway through, and then I did one wrapping it all up in San Diego. So yeah, I didn't even have stickers back then, but now I do. So you see that. Speaking of stickers, mile marker 44, I passed it, but the problem was that it was in Manzanita, and on the northbound side, it was a really strange setup because it was in a town, and the sign had two sides, so I was pointing in both directions, so there wasn't a back for me to put a sticker on. I just don't feel really good about throwing a sticker on the working side of an existing sign, so no mile marker 44 Easter egg there, I'm afraid. So just look for the Arch Cape Tunnel as the new addition with the little Pedalshift sticker. Other than that, I mean, miles go very fast in this part of the coast. And, I haven't ridden parts of my ride today since 2014. And then there's another small part, maybe the last 10 miles or so, I'd never ridden before because, as I've talked about on the pod before, normally from Tillamook, I continue to stay on 101 and go straight to Pacific City. That's not really technically part of the route. I've done it before just because it cuts off a little bit of terrain, it cuts off a little bit of mileage, and just gets me to one of my favorite coastal towns in the entire coast. So on this trip, I decided that everybody talks about Cape Lookout as being the best campsite on the entire coast. I should probably go to it. And as I mentioned, it's really great. Stumbled out here with my Bowie IPA from Astoria, Oregon, and I'm sitting here on the beach just watching the waves roll in. It's really fantastic. The campsite itself is probably one of the A+ ones. They've definitely put in
all of the bells and whistles on this one. Now, the only thing I didn't see was there wasn't a repair stand, which I've seen at South Beach State Park. But this one's got the lockers, which can be food lockers or gear lockers, that also have USB ports in them. Not even 110 outlet plugs, but all USB ports. And it looked like there were 4 per locker. So that's really fantastic. And it looks like it's solar powered, but I'm sure it has to be supplemented by traditional line electricity, because today is not a good solar electricity day, I'm here to tell you. I'm trying to think if there's anything else of excitement or note from today's ride. Fueled up in Tillamook and got some food and managed to eat the heck out of all of that. I've got basically some food that's ready for a first breakfast tomorrow morning. Of course, where I'm at right now, there's no town. And I'm 15 miles away from Pacific City and rejoining the route that I'm accustomed to riding, although this is technically the Pacific Coast route, the official Oregon Coast route as well, where I'm at right now. So probably about an hour and a half. There's a not insubstantial terrain between here and there. Probably one or if not two, I think it's just the one hill between here and Pacific City. And then I've got another one between Pacific City and Lincoln City, and I think there's another one of notes before I hit Newport. Nothing really crazy, certainly stuff that I'm very used to. That section tomorrow is probably the section of the coast that I'm most familiar with, that I've ridden the most, just because I tend to start in Tillamook and go south, and so that section of the coast happens every single time. But I'm excited to go back there again. I'm excited, even though I wish I could do more days on the coast this trip. I'm at least getting 2 things out of this trip. Number one, I am riding a new section of the coast. There really aren't that many of them. I'm trying to think if there's any other piece of the coast that is the official route that I've never ridden in. I cannot think. No, this would be it. This is sort of completing this little short divot here. Also, I really wanted to get to Newport again. And there's just something about either starting or ending a tour there that really makes me happy. So I'm excited to be able to do that. From Pacific City, Oregon, one of my favorite places in the whole wide world. And it is, the 17th of June. So this is a Monday. And I am outside of Stimulus Coffee Shop, which is a great little coffee shop here in Pacific City. I rocked out 15 miles really strongly this morning, but I think I might have been a little aggressive with my use of energy on that. I have a 65-mile day today. It's not like I've got just 50. So, I'm essentially where I'm at yesterday in terms of how much mileage I've got left. But I burnt a lot of energy to get here because it was the bigger of the 2 or 3 hills that I had was just now. And I've got another one that's coming up in about maybe 10 miles or so. So I took more of an extended break here in Pacific City. Of course, part of it is that I just really like this town. There's not a lot going on here. There's a pizza place and a brewery and a few other things as well. But it's still got that kind of small town feel, which I really prefer compared to the ones that are coming up. Kind of on record as saying that Newport might be my favorite of the bigger cities, and of course that's where I'll end up tonight. But Pacific City, I think for its size, I really like. So I grabbed a couple of snacks here at the market and had a second breakfast. I've been the king of bagels today. I had 2 as first breakfast, and I just had 1 as second breakfast. So carbon up clearly is part of my deal, and I got. For those of you who like to keep track of when I eat sugar and make fun of me, I got a king-size pack of Oreos for my climb coming up. It's funny what you end up craving, and when I'm off sugar, nothing affects me. And when I'm on sugar, I have very specific cravings, and apparently today it's Oreos. I feel like I should take it a little bit easier. I don't know why I felt like I was in a race, but I kind of treated it like that. I think part of it also is I left at the same time as some other folks and ended up passing them. And there's nothing that I hate more than passing someone and then being passed. So stupid competition of which I sort of rebel against normally in bicycle touring. But I think I have a bit of a competitive streak in me otherwise. And so anyways, that's where it manifested itself. So beautiful sunny day. I have to be honest, I would prefer it to be a little more fogged in for today, but you know what? It's warm and feels nice. I think that I'll really feel it on the climb that's to come because that one has a ton of sun exposure, and I find that one often will
spell me quite a bit when I am climbing it and in the sun, and I just expect that's gonna get me. So I'm in my lighter colored top. Right now I've got my button down on top of it because it is a little bit chilly right now, but I think I'll switch out to my sun sleeves and just the t-shirt right before the climb. There's a shop there as well, so if I'm feeling like I need some more food or some water or maybe even a little jolt of caffeine beyond what I just did to myself, I'll check that out. But I failed to mention, met a couple of folks on camp last night. The two folks that I passed this morning, I didn't catch where they were from. I spent more time with another group. One was a guy from Paris and one was a guy from Quebec. So I forced them to switch to English when I came over. And I had bought a 6-pack of beer, not intending to drink it all, thinking, okay, well, I'll have a couple left over I can bring back with me. But it was nice because since they were all cold, I was able to share those. And we had a nice conversation about, cycling and whatnot. And it's just always fun to hear perspectives from all over the world, and it's really fun to see people traveling to this incredible spot, and you just see what can bicycle touring do to communities. I mean, the fact that Oregon has put such a premium on the bicycling route, well, they got 3 people who came thousands of miles just to come and cycle it, and we managed to meet all in one spot. Coincidentally, we were all in Portland around the same time a couple of days ago, off doing our own things, but 3 bullets hitting each other simultaneously in midair. There we are in Cape Lookout State Park. So had a fire. It was good. We were able to collect some firewood. They were having fires on the beach, so we figured, all right, if people are allowed to burn the wood down there, we grabbed a couple of armloads and had a nice fire and some good conversations. So that was pretty cool. All right, well, that's about it for the morning session. I will be tackling the second of the big climbs. I'll just kind of play this all by ear. When I sat down after this first 15, I felt pretty cooked. And I thought, well, I could just take the bus down, but then I relaxed a little bit, and I was like, there's no way I'm taking a bus down the Oregon coast. I'm going to be doing plenty of busing tomorrow when I come back. So how about we just ride this whole thing? All right, more later. From the base of the Yaquina Bay Bridge in, I guess, am I in Newport? Technically, am I in Newport? We'll call it Newport, Oregon, but I am actually south, technically, I believe, of Newport, Oregon. Wrapping up the tour, it was fantastic. I think today was maybe one of my strongest days of bike riding in any tour I've ever done, potentially. Every time I think that the Green Goblin is a bike that I want to say farewell to, I keep having rides like this on it. And as I mentioned, the bike is way too small for me, and it's a little jacked up, and it's super vintage. But for some reason, I can really kick some ass on it. And today, I really did. I found myself in the 3rd chainring. Now, if you're in a triple and you're touring, at least let me use my I words and my me words here. I find I'm never in my 3rd chainring ever on tours. It's very rare, maybe on downhills if I'm really wanting to kick up the speed. But for this week, for the last couple of days, I found myself in the 3rd chainring the majority of the time. Part of it was because of the fact that my middle chainring was giving me minor problems until today when I actually lubricated the chain and everything seemed to behave a little bit better in the middle chainring. But I found myself in the 3rd chainring a lot, not just on flats, but even on some slight upgrades as well, which was surprising and interesting and cool. And I foolishly did not turn on my ride with GPS, partially because that drains the battery a little bit. And on a full day ride, I just didn't want to be bothered with that. And I wish I had, because it would have been nice to have seen what my average speed was. I clearly was somewhere averaging potentially 15. Now, it may have been screwed up by some of the uphills where I was very clearly not going anywhere near that. But, the downhills often make up for the uphills, but man, on the flats, I was burning it. I thought that at best, given the breaks that I was taking and all of that I would be getting into South Beach State Park no earlier than 5 o'clock. And I got here at 4:30, which, as somebody who doesn't exactly consider himself a
a speed burner when it comes to touring. I'm often the slowest or amongst the slower folks in any given party when there's multiple folks going. Man, I felt good and strong, and part of it is because I've come off of another long tour, and as I mentioned before, I don't want to say peak bike touring shape, but I'm in good bike touring shape right now. And also, I'm riding a little bit lighter. I'm not as fully loaded as I was for the DC to Cincinnati tour, so maybe all of these things are there. But maybe this little green goblin bike is the right bike for me for touring. I really was burning it up and enjoying it. And I think maybe also part of it is some of the elements of the route between, let's see, that would be Cape Lookout and Newport here, and it ended up working out really well. It was fast and fun, and I got to go through some of my favorite parts. There's a couple of great inclines that you go up, some hillier parts, some beautiful vistas. Right outside of Newport, there's a spot that takes you off of the 101, and it takes you on this really beautiful kind of windy area where it's a one-way road, but there's a specific bicycle lane. If you've ridden the Pacific Coast route, you may remember this. I remember when I first was riding the route that I would get frustrated with it because it's a little bit of an up and down. It's not as efficient as maybe being on 101. I've never stayed on 101. I've always done it. But for the first time on this one, I found myself riding it in a really strong way. You end up out at a lighthouse overlook, which I decided that I've been to it a few times and I decided not to go to it. Just kept going down, but because largely it was the last of the hills before getting into Newport, I was like, let me just keep pushing on, see where I'm at. And then when I'm checking the time as I'm coming over the Akina Bay Bridge here, I'm realizing that it's 4:30 and I'm checking in at the campsite there, and I was like, wow, well, that's pretty fantastic. So at South Beach State Park, if you are riding the Oregon coast, the book recommends Beverly Beach, which is on the north side of Newport. And from the jump, doffing my hats to Mysterious James, because he's not a ride the ride that someone tells you to do. He just sort of did it on his own. He found South Beach State Park, and he was the one who said, this is the one you want to go to because you got Brewers on the Bay and gets you that much closer. And it's actually, I think, a nicer state park of the two of them. It just is fantastic. You go an extra 10 miles, and, today that ended up being a 65-mile day, which is, that's a pretty average day, but it's on the longer of the average days for me. Now, for a 2-day bike tour, I'm not so sure I would necessarily typically do 65 miles on the second day, but just given what I wanted my goal to be, it made sense to do it. And as I said, it was a strong riding day. At the beginning of the day, I was able to say hello and goodbye, as it turned out, to the guy from Quebec. And I gave him my Pedalshift card just so that he would be able to check out the pod. He seemed interested in listening to it. He's going to be doing the whole coast, so I was kind of downloading some information to him, as I want to do. And the other guy was still sound asleep. The guy from Paris, interestingly, he's kind of a night owl, so he had a bunch of wood and he was ready to stay up super late. And you could tell he was sound asleep still in his hammock, so I didn't want to bug him. But it was a good time to kind of hang out with those guys last night, and I was glad to be able to connect. I was hoping to be able to run into the guy from Quebec down in Pacific City, and I said, hey, I'm going to get on the road now, maybe I'll check you out there, and told him I was going to be at the coffee shop. I was there for a half hour and didn't see a sign of him, so he was probably maybe getting a little bit later start and didn't get down there, so I didn't get a chance to see him again, but had a good time hanging out with him last night. I mentioned the guys that I passed. I saw them after I recorded my morning session in Pacific City. Literally, as I'm pulling out, they were coming in. So I ended up being about a half hour ahead of them. They left maybe 5 to 10 minutes before me, and I passed them on the first hill up, which was a pretty decent climb. But they were taking it easy, and they also weren't going to be doing the same mileage. They were going to be going to Devil's Lake, which is in Lincoln City. Speaking of Lincoln City is sort of the place that I'm like, let me get through here as quick as possible, but I often will do a lunch there. I ended up at a Mexican place on the far side of town, and that ended up being a perfect spot. Normally I stop at the Pig and Pancake, which is kind of tradition. When I lived in Oregon, my law school buddies and I came out to the coast. This is back in the dream of the 90s, folks. And went there. And so it's kind of tradition that I usually go there. But for whatever reason today, I just wasn't feeling it. I didn't think I was hungry enough at the time. Wasn't feeling pancakes or eggs or anything like that. And by the far side of Lincoln City, I was like, I'm ready to eat. And I'm glad I did. I had a big burrito. One of the things about living on the East Coast is we get I'm not saying, not to disrespect the Mexican restaurants and the Tex-Mex options on the East Coast, but it's not the same. It's not nearly as good as on the West Coast, so I do tend to like to visit those as frequently as possible. So I got a good, what did I get? I got a chili relleno burrito. Very solid, very good. That fueled me up, and it was great. And sometimes when I end up here in Newport, I end up eating a lot along the way, and I end up not being very hungry by the time I come out here to dinner at Brewers on the Bay. Tonight was an exception. I was ready to eat, and I got a couple of appetizers thinking that would just start me off, but they were so enormous. I got fried cheese curds and, deep fried, what were they fried? Or crispy buffalo cauliflower. And that was just perfect, and it was great, and I had a couple of beers on top of that, including the my favorite one I think they have, which is the hazelnut chocoltabulous, which is a mix, a 50-50 mix of their hazelnut and their chocolate stout. And it's fantastic. It's a great way to cap things off. So anyways, yeah, yet another amazing, fun, great day here. Getting to Newport. I like to start tours here. I like to end tours here. I like to visit here. It just ends up being a really good spot and puts a smile on my face. So, this is the end of the Oregon Coast Escape. It's got me thinking that maybe I'm coming back out to the West Coast later again this year. I think, for some reason, I don't think I'm done with the West Coast. So, stay tuned. More to come. Statistics. Miles biked 116, flats 0, mechanicals 0, tunnels 1, old Easter egg stickers found 2, new Easter egg pedal shift stickers placed 3, big bridges 1, did it both ways, 6 packs shared 1, return trips planned. Oh, many. And as always, we'd like to close out the show with a special shout out to the Pedalshift Society. Because of support from listeners like you, Pedalshift is a weekly bicycle touring podcast with a global community, expanding into live shows, meetups, tour journals, you name it. If you like what you hear, you can support the show for $5, $2, or even $1 a month. And there's one-shot annual options if you're not into the whole small monthly thing. Check it all out at pedalshift.net/society. On to the society. Kimberly Wilson, Caleb Jenkinson, Cameron Lean, Andrew McGregor, Michael Hart, Keith Nagel, Brock Dittis, Thomas Skadow, Marco Lowe, Terrence Manson, Harry Telgadis, Chris Barron, Mark Van Ram, Brad Hipwell, Stuart Buchan, Todd Stutz, Mr. T, Roxy Arning, Nathan Poulton, Stephen Dickerson, Vince LaGreco, Paul Culbertson, Scott Culbertson, Cody Forchinger, Tom Beninati, Greg Braithwaite, Sandy Pizzio, Jeff Muster, Seth Pollock, Joseph Quinn, Drew Porter, Byron Patterson, Joachim Robert, Ray Jackson, Jeff Fry, Kenny Mikey, Lisa Hart, John Denkler, Steve Hankel, Miguel Quinones, Alejandro Aviles Reyes, Keith Spangler, Greg Towner, Dan Gephardt, Jody Zeranin, Lucas Barwick, Michael Baker, Brian Bechtal, Reinhard Biggle, Greg Middlemas, Connie Moore, William Goffman, Brian Benton, Joan Churchill, Mike Bender, Rick Weinberg, Billy Crafton, Gary Matushak, Greg Letoile Lopez, and new to the society, James Sloan, Jonathan Dillard, and John Funk. And thanks also to all past and anonymous members for helping make this show happen. Thank you for joining. You can find Pedalshift at pedalshift.net for more great bicycle touring content. You can hear the Pedalshift project through Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast app. Opening music courtesy of Jason Kent off his self-titled album. The track is called America. Check out his band Sunfield's latest release, Mono Mono, wherever cool music is available.